I introduce
really
you?
sorry. Sorry for the confusion, and sorry I'm in my car.
That's all right, but actually we're getting a very good connection given that you're talking wirelessly, so that's fantastic. Look, I have already spoken a bit about you. Everyone's already heard, so I think we'll keep it very brief. We've heard already that you set the world record in 2002 by going to a depth of 160 metres or 525 feet. And that was a men and women world record at the time. You held the all-gender world record for 2 months until some guy came and beat it. But amazingly, almost 20 years later, you still hold that world record for the women. So how amazing is that? And how often is a world record held for that long? So I had the pleasure of meeting Tanya when I was writing my book, Ocean of Self. A mutual friend of ours, Dave Appley, asked Tanya if I could communicate with her so that I could check the accuracy of my reference to Tanya in my book. We spoke on Skype, and now we're meeting face to face. Tanya, what's the time at the moment here? It's 8 o'clock. So if you could somehow keep it to about 15 minutes and we allow a bit of time for questioning, because it's a Rotary club and because people have to go off to work, we have to finish strictly in about half an hour. So I'll leave it to you, Tanya, and thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. I'm sorry, mass confusion. Even the iPhone world clock has the time wrong. So I'm sorry, and welcome to my car and some Austin traffic, if you have any interest in Austin traffic. I do apologize. My daughter is even here. Hi. Getting ready to go to track. Okay, so you're a day in the life of me right now, not underwater, which is where I would rather be. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for persisting. I'm sorry we still had confusion at the end, but you know it's an honor for me to speak to you all. I'm glad you know a little bit about freediving. Now I'm sort of wondering what more to tell you about, other than I think maybe there seems to be this sort of interest in how a freediver becomes an environmentalist. And so if that's okay, I think perhaps I'll just talk a little bit about how I got from the bottom of the ocean to my my soapbox about plastic pollution, while I keep my eyes on the road. Lucky I know this story really well. So, you know, from the beginning of my career, freediving, I got a lot of invitations to, you know, support this organization or this NGO or this charity or that charity. And it was always to do with the ocean, which of course made perfect sense. And I loved every single one of them. I loved volunteering, making and sinking reef balls in Dominica. I loved counting fish on Florida reefs. I loved just cleaning beaches and doing all of that stuff. But I think because I was a child in the 70s and 80s in Grand Cayman, and I really bore witness to the, you know, the awful truth of plastic, especially in a tourism destination. It's almost like, as an island, Grand Cayman, you know, it's like a microcosm for the rest of the planet. And you could say the same about other islands, of course. Big islands like yourselves, little teeny islands like Grand Cayman. You know, we're running out of places to put our trash, much like the planet. But back in the 70s, when I was a child, 70s and 80s, and out snorkeling, I would be just horrified to find one plastic cup on the beach which had blown down from one of the bars, or, you know, a straw floating in the sea or something. And I could use this sort of singular, like, Mom, I found a plastic cup. I look back on that now and I think, gosh, I'd love to just find one. But even from that, and from being on a windsurfer or something with friends and spotting just a pair of sunglasses at the bottom of the sea, I'd be like, oh, I'm getting those. And but in my mind, I always knew, even as a child, that it was littering and that it was, just not supposed to be there. So the idea for me of keeping oceans clean has always been there. But then I had this career in the ocean where I could literally see day by day the amount of plastic just increasing and increasing and increasing. And then so I have my freediving career. I didn't actually end with that world record dive. I did another 2 after that the following year, but it is the one that still remains 20 years later. Believe me, nobody's more surprised than me. And in the course of that and my evolution with different charitable organizations, in 2011, so almost exactly 10 years ago now, I was approached by the Plastic Oceans Foundation, and they are now Ocean Generation, they've rebranded, to be a spokesperson for them, which of course, I'm like, absolutely, yes, of course I'll support this cause, but how do I get my hands dirty? How do I actually do something? And they went away and thought about it, and then came back and said, well, will you be a part of our film, A Plastic Ocean? And that's when my understanding of the issue just, the learning curve is very steep. I thought I knew that plastic was a problem. I didn't realize the extent of the problem. And this is something that I speak to a lot of people about when we're just talking about the environmental work that I do, is that even people who you think know it all have no idea how bad the problem is. And so for me, every time I would go out on a shoot, and it was a fundraised film. So of course we shoot until we run out of money, and then we all go back and try to raise more money, and then we go back out again. So there's lots of various different shoots. And I would go out and then come back and change something in my own kitchen or my own lifestyle, as a way to try, to make a difference and to educate my kids. When this one was about 5, I think, I came back from a shoot, and I was doing something a little bit like this, although she was in the back seat, and picking her up from school, and stopped to put some gas in my car, petrol in my car. And there was a woman coming out of the little shop carrying something, clearly one item in a plastic bag. And Tilly was in tears, like, Mummy, you have to tell her that's not okay. And I just, my mind, she's laughing. But I said, darling, we can't do that. We're in Texas. We might get shot. So I'm not gonna go accosting people. But I said, darling, we are telling them. We're telling, them with this film. And it was just such a great learning curve for me that, long story short, all of my previous work with different organizations made sense. But this issue of plastic pollution just really, I feel like I came full circle in my relationship with the sea, which I depended on so heavily while I was competing. And I always sort of committed that I would pay her back. And I felt like through the film that I was being able to do that. And through using my platform as a free diver, and then doing some other television, giving me the television personality thing as well, by putting so many of my eggs in the plastic pollution basket, I really felt like I was finally making good on my promise to the sea. But every day I still learn. I mean, the film wrapped, it's done very, very well. It's still on Netflix for anybody who hasn't seen it. And the best part of my journey now at this point is there's many best parts. Obviously the fact that my children and the next generation are so well educated on the issue that they just sort of look at me dumbfounded. Why do they make that, Mummy, if it's so bad for the planet? Why do we even have it? Which is, of course, the mindset that the next generation need to have, because they're the ones that are going to, clean up our mess. But also, I had this gift to hold my breath, which led me to this weird place of success and career in the ocean, and then my platform, and then being involved in one of the first films on the issue, but now being able to step back and seeing this huge wave of change on the issue, and knowing that we were a part of that and at the base of the wave is just really, really gratifying for me. And being able to, yes, share my story with all corners of the world. And if anybody has any questions about plastic pollution and what they can do, I may go over time. But really, that's been it for me. I'm in the thick of it again with a young child, so I'm gonna turn a corner so you may lose me for a second. You know, I'm back in the trenches with a 5-year-old boy who keeps me on my toes in coronavirus when, you know, he's not at school. So I've had less of that taking up my time and attention, and I actually take my hat off to Mark and Deb for persisting with me, because I could make it extraordinarily difficult for people to pin me down. So a lot of people give up before you both did, so thank you. And, you know, being able to just talk about it to audiences like this and know that bit by bit I'm still being the spokesperson that I can be is kind of what's the most gratifying at this point. And also my husband and I have been drooling over trips back to Grand Cayman or anywhere in the Caribbean, because I'm dying for some salt water up my nose at this point, because I'm landlocked in Texas and I haven't had anything like that. Except I was in Brisbane this time a year ago, or a little bit more. And I did get to dive there, which was just amazing. Actually a little bit further north than you. So yeah, so that's kind of where I am now. I don't do any competitive freediving, and even when I get asked to do freediving, if it's related to a TV show or an appearance, I tend to send people to freedivers who are more active these days, and quite honestly who've dived a lot deeper than I have, except for that one world record, because I feel like a bit of a fraud in that community, sort of almost 20 years after retiring. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. I would happily take questions about anything related to the environmental aspect of my work, or going way back into freediving. I don't know what film, Mark, you were playing just now, but I can certainly send links to some other films, you know, from YouTube and stuff that are more about freediving. But I'll happily take questions as I drive, and I'll be stopping driving very soon.
Tanya, Mark here. Thank you so much for your talk. I'm just so glad you didn't have an accident while you're driving.
Yeah, no, my car has too many safety things. We're in Vivi the Volvo. She would stop me from having a wreck.
Good. It's funny, you were born in the Grand Cayman Islands. I think that was, I've got my notes here, back in, was it 1979?
No, oh, thank you. No, 1973.
Oh, 73. Oh, I've got to reset.
But I'll take 79.
Okay. Well, in 1981, I was diving in the Grand Cayman Islands. So I was a 27-year-old then. But how fascinating! Yeah,
Wow.
Grand Cayman and Little Cayman Island, of course, I have very good memories of as well. Those beautiful drop-offs there.
Yes, I'm longing to get back to Little Cayman. Apparently I was conceived in Little Cayman, but you know, that's the story I don't know much about, thankfully.
Now, just before I pass on for questions, the other thing I wanted to mention is that Rotary is a very powerful organisation. It's worldwide. A few of us have the thought that Rotary is also putting a lot more attention now onto environmental issues and peace, conflict resolution and peace promotion. So these kind of expanded new directions of Rotary is where maybe Rotary can fit in with your plastics goal of reducing plastics in the ocean. So that's something, if you like, you and I can talk about, getting it going here in Australia. Certainly through the district of Rotary clubs here, we have a national marine science centre here. So we have a good infrastructure where we can help you with your cause as well. So
well, thank you. Certainly there's probably some people that I could put you in touch with that you know, would be able to direct you to, you know, stuff on the ground in your area, hopefully.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, okay, so we'll talk about that. I'll communicate with you in due course. But I'm sure we have questions. Anyone like to ask a question to Tanya?
Try your spikes on with the insoles. Okay.
Questions. Sure, Mark. Oh, Tanya, this is a diving cardiologist friend of mine.
Oh.
No questions about the cardiac physiology. No, I'm interested, just having, in my own experience, grown up diving and seeing the ocean and seeing how interconnected the plastic pollution is for the whole world, made me realise, is that my framework? Yeah. Made me realise that we can't do it on an individual based level. Like, just in my own family, I've got a couple of young kids and we make all the right decisions and recycle soft plastics like a lot of us do in Australia, or, moved on from single-use plastic cutlery and all those sorts of things. But it just isn't going to achieve any meaningful change. I think there are just too many big players in either other countries, developing countries, food industry, commercial fishing industry, and so on, that I just wonder what your organisation is able to do on the big stage.
Well, I would beg to differ with you when you think that your efforts aren't making a change. I mean, if I as a parent, I would say you're categorically wrong because you're modeling the correct behavior for your children. And my belief and the belief of the organization of Ocean Generation and many organizations that work on this issue is that the way to solve the problem is there isn't just one way. It really is a multi-pronged attack, and individuals actually can do a lot. The power of the consumer is enormous, and if you if you stop showing a need for something, it stops getting made. Granted, that seems like a very slow way to do it, but of course, the more we say no to single-use plastics, hopefully the less single-use plastics will be on the market to be bought. If at the end of the day, if there's not a profit to be made, then hopefully these items won't be bought. And then there's from the top down a legislative approach and lobbying legislation in different countries to legislate the use of single-use plastics appropriately and other waste disposal methods. I think the short answer is that we all believe that it is something that has to be attacked from not just from the top down, not just from the bottom up, but just from every conceivable angle. I wish I could tell you exactly what Ocean Generation and Plastic Oceans UK are working on in particular at the moment. I know there's another film in the works. I mean, as a foundation that has its sort of roots in filmmaking and understanding the power of that voice, I think that that's where oftentimes we are best placed. But we also do a lot of outreach and educational programs with schools all over the world, which I also, again, I don't think it's too altruistic to really think that the children growing up in this world are going to help solve the problem. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. And education on the issue is huge. Sylvia Earle says in our film, if you don't know, you can't care. So we do have to inform people of the problem first. And yes, we can point the finger at countries that seemingly contribute more than we do to the problem. But, it's a global problem and it's a global planet. We all have to take care of it, and some have more powers and more strength and more money to throw at the issue than others. But we have to. It has to be a non-partisan issue, and it has to be something that we approach outside of politics to make the changes necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you for not asking about my heart. Still beats and I know nothing about it. Okay.
You know where to come if you have any questions. Any other questions? Lelia is going to ask a question, Tanya.
Hello, sorry, I know how awful it is to talk to nothing. So my question is more about the more, like, obviously you have a very strong connection and to the ocean and the environment, and wondering, like, like the sea is a wilderness basically, but then how has the knowing more about the plastic pollution and sort of human impact on the planet, has that changed your idea and sort of, it's a bit abstract, but like your relationship
Yeah.
with the, how you think about it?
You know, I love being asked a question that I've never been asked before, so thank you. I don't think it has. If anything, I guess I'm quite an emotional person. I realize this more and more, especially when I speak my emotions publicly. I really realize, like, wow, I'm very heavily vested in the issue. And if anything, I'm prone to be a little bit overwhelmed sometimes too, to think, oh, are we ever going to be able to turn this around? And so I guess if my emotions have changed and my connection with the ocean, I guess I have a little more sadness and dread. But then there's days when I see individuals or small groups doing incredible things, or I see whole countries legislate, you know, something really incredible, and I go, no, it's okay, this is hopeful, you know, I feel like we still got you, ocean. We're gonna do the right thing. I mean, I guess I oscillate a little bit, but now I think the other factor for me is being a parent of a near 13-year-old and a near 6-year-old. I'm maybe more, and not living in the Caribbean, I'm even more fanatical about them seeing the ocean the way that it can be and the way that it was when I was a child, and then watched it kind of deteriorate as I grew up. I still really want them to see beautiful reefs, so they know what we're shooting for, you know, that it can and should and hopefully will be back in that beautiful condition if we all play by the rules.
Any other questions? No? Okay. I might ask Lelia, who you just spoke to, Tanya, to give the official vote of thanks.
Thank you so much for making the time in what seems like a hectic schedule. The thought of Texas at the moment is terrifying.
Yes, should be.
So thank you for making time, and from all of us. It was lovely to hear that there's still actually someone who knows as much as you do about the problem, is still optimistic on some level, which is very encouraging, because it does seem like an overwhelming problem that, what do we do? But the fact that you still have hope gives me hope, and all of us here. So from all of us, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Lelia, and thank you, Tanya. I should mention to everyone, there is a documentary called A Plastic Ocean 2016, where Tanya features. That's probably a worthwhile documentary to watch. Thank you. And what was your daughter's name again?
Silly.
Thank you for joining us as well.
By accident. Bye. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tanya. Bye.